Shalom, and welcome to What the Watchman Sees, a ministry that will sift through all of the social media noise to show you news of importance from the Most High's perspective. As watchmen, we are here both to warn of dangers and give biblical answers for dwelling in the secret place of the Most High during these times of confusion. Tell your family and friends to like, share, and subscribe as we delve into what Yahweh has for us, the apple of His eye. Let's get to work. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue our Shabbat lesson with Matthew chapter 7. We'll be looking at verses 1 through 5. So we begin with Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. Judge not that you be not judged, for with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why do you behold the mote that is in your brother's eye, but consider not the beam that is in your own eye? Or will you say to your brother, let me pull out the mote out of your eye, and behold, a beam is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of your own eye, and then shall you see clearly to cast out the mote of your brother's eye. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look up the word judge, and we'll look that up in the interlinear, and then we'll look at the Strong's definition. This is a Greek word pronounced krino, and so we'll look up the definition of the word judge, and we can see that it is a verb and that it's a root word, which means that you can't break it down any farther than this. So there are several explanations of what that word means, but just to review very quickly, what you're seeing here are ways that the culture used that word or understood that word to have meaning for it. Okay, and these are all extrapolated from all of the places in the scriptures where the word judge is used, specifically in the New Testament. Okay, so it's mentioned total of 114 times. So in those 114 times, one of these definitions is usable. Okay, and it says to judge is translated to call in question. What I would like to point out is the general way it's used is it's the process of separating, to move things that have been together, to separate those things. Okay, and then to pick out of the things that have been separate that which is what you want and that which is what you don't want. So that's the thinking. Now, if you move that into how, let's say, the court system uses the understanding of judging, because the court system got its protocols from these definitions as well. When you bring a case before a judge in a courtroom, you are submitting a petition for the judge to agree with what you're saying, and usually you're saying that in disagreement with someone else, the plaintiff and the defendant, so to speak. So it's the judge's job to determine which one of you and which one of your positions has the correct weight. Well, the judge uses something to make that determination. What the judge uses is the law. There are statutes that are written that allowed you to come before the judge to say, okay, according to this statute, this is the stuff that applies in my situation, and the other person is doing the same thing. So then the judge takes your information, weighs it against the statute. Now, this is when it's done right. Okay, weighs it against the statute, and then makes a ruling as to who has agency and who does not have agency. All right. So what the scriptures are saying to us in Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 6, let me see if I can get back to that now. The scriptures that we're reading, or that we just read, are an account of Yeshua talking to his disciples, talking to the people who had decided to follow him. Here is how I want you to live as citizens of the kingdom. Don't forget, all of his teaching is about how to get in and how to remain in the as a citizen, the kingdom of the Most High. So in the kingdom of the Most High, and in order to stay in the kingdom of the Most High, the disciples were told, okay, you don't judge, because the same way that you judge, you're going to be judged. That's what he says in verse 2. And so by the same standards that you're measuring against someone else, those same standards are going to be measured against you. Okay, that's what it means by, and with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. Okay. And then he with us again, because this is talking to us. And why are you looking at the speck in your brother's eye, but don't consider the log or the beam that is in your own eye? You can't see clearly enough to tell your brother what to do. First, get your own self together, and then you can maybe help your brother. But in any case, you don't judge him, because the same way that you judge your brother or your sister, you're going to be judged by that same standard. Well, again, if we use the courtroom analogy, the reason why he's telling the disciples this is because they can petition the judge, but they're not the judge. The judge judges righteously by a standard, and the standard that is used will determine the outcome. Again, the process of judging is to separate. You remember when Yeshua was telling the people in the last day, he's going to come and separate people as a shepherd separates his sheep from his goats. The shepherd knows the difference between the sheep and the goat. The disciples are being told that same thing in this situation. What they're being told is, you're not the shepherd. You don't have the authority to separate by what the scriptures say, because that's not what you usually do. When you separate by your own standards, and that is not what the Most High wants his people to be doing. He wants his people to use his standards. And if we're going to use his standards, there is a judge already sitting on that bench, and that bench doesn't have our name on it. The Most High is the judge. The Most High, as the judge, gave his authority to his son, Yeshua, and Yeshua is telling those who are listening to him, I'm not here to judge right now. I'm here to save you, not to judge you, because the next time I come, I will be coming as the judge, but this isn't the next time yet. So that's why you should not be trying to sit in my seat doing something that I'm supposed to do, and that is out of order. But if you do that the same way that you judge somebody else, I'm going to judge you. Now, in our culture, in our community, and when I keep saying in our culture, I'm talking about the culture of those who are in this Babylon that we live in, the land of our captivity, the way that we live in this land of our captivity. I'm talking about that group of people. I'm talking about those who are called by the name of the Most High. Okay. And in that group of people, we have made a science out of judging other people while ignoring our own failings. This is why Yeshua is talking to us about that. There's one other part to that. That's how we act, but what we say is what I had said earlier. We say you're not supposed to judge. God says don't judge. That comes out of our mouth quick and in a hurry too. But the way we live is we're always judging, and we're always negatively judging our own people. We can see very clearly how dysfunctional somebody else's family is, how hypocritical somebody else is, what those preachers are doing and what they're not doing. Um, and the list goes on and on and on. But we never examine our own selves by those same standards. This is something that, again, is a part of our culture that we really need to examine and repent of. Okay, I've heard all my life that people judge the preacher, and we know who the preacher is. Okay, the guy or the woman standing in the pulpit. We judge the preacher by, do they visit the sick? I got sick, and that pastor never came and talked to me. Maybe that doesn't happen with your congregation, but it used to happen in the place that I am a lot. Well, people used to say that a lot, and that's how they would judge who's a good preacher and who's not. Of course, there were other judgments, but I'm just talking about this one thing. When in actuality, the people who are saying that, they ain't visiting those people, and the people that they're not visiting, they're closer to them than the pastor is. But yet it's the pastor's fault, and therefore he ain't living right because he won't do that. That's an example. Okay, it's a minor example actually, but that's how we treat one another, and that's how we treat the word. So now in my same congregation, that's I've seen that negatively, but I've also seen it in a positive way in my congregation, where without saying anything to anybody, the visiting of the sick becomes the unofficial ministry of some sister or some brother and sister who are in the pews with everybody else, and we all know who they are, because when we get sick, we look up and they in the doorway, okay, trying to be of help. So that does happen, but we ignore those people because we have determined in ourselves that's the preacher's job. You see what I'm saying? So those kinds of things are the problem that Jesus is speaking to. Well, actually, those kinds of things come from this community of believers that Yeshua wants us to revisit from his perspective. Okay. Now, so what that okay, so what's that got to do with Matthew chapter 7? What I'm saying is, if I'm one of the people saying that the preacher's not doing right because he's not visiting, that same standard is going to be used on me on the day that Yeshua does come back as the judge. He's going, and well, I probably should have turned to it, but when the scripture talks about when the Son of Man comes, he's going to separate people from the sheep as the sheep from the goats. He said there will be those in that day that said, well, he will get this one group of people called the sheep together, and he will tell them, come and inherit this blessing that the Father has for you, because when I was sick, you came to visit me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. And the people who have been judged to be the sheep will say to him, well, Father, when did we see you sick? When did we see you hungry? And all of those other things that you just complimented us for. And so then the judge says, in the fact that you did it to the least of these my brothers and sisters, you have done it unto me. That's why you can come into the kingdom and be a full-fledged citizen in my kingdom. And then he said just the opposite for those who would be considered the goat. He said, you go into outer darkness. You're not getting into my kingdom, because when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was sick, you didn't come to visit me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. And those people said the exact same thing that the other group said. They said, well, when did we see you like that? And he told them the exact same thing. Inasmuch as you've done it not unto these, you have done it not the least of these. That's what he said. Inasmuch as you've done it not to the least of these, my brothers, you have done it not unto me. And that's why you can't be a part of my kingdom. Brothers and sisters, that day hasn't come yet. And since that day has not come yet, that's why we don't have any business sitting in that seat telling people, y'all are going to heaven and y'all are going to hell. That's not our job. Our job is to look in the mirror using the standard by which the judge uses. Well, what standard is that? Are you feeding those who are hungry? Are you clothing those who are naked? Are you visiting the sick? All of those things. Notice, maybe our next meditation should flesh this out some, because this doesn't come in a vacuum. What Jesus is teaching his disciples is there's another path that I want you all to be on. And your culture is stopping you from being on that path, because in your culture, when you can see other people's faults clearly, but you can't see your own, that makes you blind. And if you're blind, you can't lead anybody. The blind that lead the blind end up in the ditch. So you need to listen to what I'm saying to you so that you can have a clear vision on how you're supposed to be. Now, I'm saying that because the other thing that he said is, the other thing that the people said that we're not going to be in the kingdom is, but Father, we prophesied in your name. We did a lot of wonderful works in your name. We heal people in your name. And that is the group of people that he said, depart from me, you who work iniquity. He said, you who work iniquity. He didn't say you who are doing righteous things. And he tells them why. Because, and then he goes down that list. When I was sick, you didn't visit me, et cetera, et cetera. So being a prophet will not get you into the kingdom of heaven. Let me just get right down to it. Being a good church attender will not get you into the kingdom of heaven. Being a preacher will not get you into the kingdom of heaven. You can be one of the best orators on the planet and still not be a citizen of the kingdom. But Yeshua is looking at, and again, that's not a judgment. This is what Yeshua is telling those who work iniquity. He says, that's not the standard by which you are being judged. You're being judged by the standard of how are you treating my children? Because the same way that you treat my children is the same way that you're treating me. Now let's get more precise in this. Okay. Jesus's children, make no mistake about it, are the least of these in this society. So depending on how you're treating the least of these, let me finish that thought. Depending on how you're treating the least of these will determine your stature or lack thereof in the kingdom of heaven that is coming. Yeshua is coming, and he's coming a lot than some of us think. What are we supposed to be doing? This is we just passed the Day of Atonement. What's the Day of Atonement? The day that the high priest went into the Holy of Holies and offered up for himself and the rest of his nation a sacrifice for sins. And that this is a yearly activity that the people of the Most High have been told to remember. All right. But then in Hebrews says Yeshua went into the Holy of Holies one time, gave his blood, and now that doesn't have to be done again. So in other words, see, when Yeshua was here the first time, these things that he was teaching, like in Matthew chapter 7, were to get people ready for when he comes the next time. So this time when he's teaching them to save them from themselves. That's what his name means. If you remember, Mary was told, name your baby Yeshua, because he shall save his people from their sin. So if we judge others, that is a sin. And that's why Yeshua is teaching us, and the teaching is our salvation. So he expects us then to do what we do differently now that we know these things. And that, okay, so we'll stop there. But as we look at Matthew 7, verses 1 through 5, the thread is the reason why you don't judge is because you're just as bad, if not worse, than the people you're judging. Because the Father doesn't look at the specific sin. He looks at the heart of the people committing the sin. All of sin. But the Father is looking at, is your heart directed toward me? Because I can always save you from your sin. But if you are a judge of other people, then the very thing that you're judging them by is what's going to condemn you. That's the message of Matthew 7. So we give thanks to the Father for what he has shown us in this on this Shabbat. Father, bless you and keep you. Father, make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Father, lift up his